Is there, before I start showing you how to do this stuff, anybody, can you think of age, in terms of age, how would age explain the difference in male and female salaries? Let's assume female salaries are less. You know, as opposed to what we're thinking of, is there any reason to think that the differences are due to something else other than just, some sort of bias in this company? No ideas? If women are younger in this company, if women are older, that doesn't explain the age difference or the difference in salary? Okay, how?
Because maybe the longer you work, the more money you get.
Typically, do you think younger people get paid more or less than older people? Okay, so maybe if women, in the company are younger, that kind of explains why their salary is lower, no? How about years of experience? Can that explain, male versus female years of experience? Can that explain the difference in salary? As you get more years of experience, what happens to your pay? Okay, so what if men tend to have more years of experience? Does that explain the salary difference? So that would suggest it's not bias, it's years of experience. Level. As you get a sort of higher and higher in the hierarchy, what happens to your salary? So let's suppose that men are in more positions in the higher level of the hierarchy. So you could argue that why are only men there, not women? That could be an argument you could make, but you could also say, well, salaries are higher because there's more men in positions of on a higher level. Managers get paid more. Ethnicity, you can also look into that. In other words, it could be that there is a bias, and it's ethnicity, but there's a what do they call it? Yeah, not collusion. What's the word I'm looking for? There's where one thing is masking the other thing. I'm forgetting the word, but in any case, it could be that actually there is bias, it's ethnicity, and it turns out that more women are a minority. And so it just seems like there's sexual bias or gender bias, when in fact there's actually a minority bias, and it's the gender bias is just a happenstance, a circumstantial, a random, association. The fundamental cause is really this. So that's what we're trying to get at. We're trying to generate the numbers to see any of these reasonable points of view can be explained. And so what we want to do is make sure, okay, the company's not going to be sued, and that there's no reasonable way for people to have a reputation that we don't treat women as well as we do men. So we can still hopefully recruit the best women out there. So if anyone doubts us, and if there's any rumors about our company, we have the data. We can just say, here, look at this. This is we are a great opportunity for women as well as men. Okay, so that's our goal here, and the next thing we need to do is generate the data. Very briefly, I'm going to go through what I did before, but you should make sure you know about these things and learn these things so you can get around. You'll have this variable info page. This tells you what your variables are. It tells you how you're measured. It's going to tell you where the data came from. In addition, you're going to have all that information on the Canvas page. It's going to give you where the data came from. It's going to give you the data and things like that. But in the Excel file, you're always going to have this, a list of variables telling you what data you have, how it's measured. Here's the short name. The short name is what they'll call it in the data, but it's also just an easier way of labeling something. Okay. Human resources data. This is what the data, there's one worksheet here with the data, and it actually is approximately 120 cases. So you see it goes to 124 rows. Control arrow key to get to the top, and so that's 120 cases. So it's 124 minus 4. That means you have a sample of 120 employees that were randomly taken to address or to infer about the whole company. Let's say the whole company has 2,000 or 3,000 employees. So this is a random sample. Okay, so this should be a good way of getting insight into the overall population, because we don't really care about these 120, employees. What we care about is if this sample reflects the entire company. And in this case, random sample, so it should reflect the whole company. And there's enough cases, right? So what's the minimum number of cases we need for an analysis? Does anyone remember? 30, good, okay. And it's a random sample that allows us to infer the larger population. Okay, so pivot table, I'm going to do two things. I'm going to reprise the very simple analysis of how to analyze just the male versus female salary. And then I'm going to take something like age and show you how to do that, because there's some extra steps. So in the meantime, you should be using your data and then following along and refreshing your memory and making sure your data eventually ends up looking, something like mine. So I click in the data anywhere, I'm not highlighting, and I simply click on Insert Pivot Table, and I'll just take the defaults, click OK. And now this is the page that allows me to set up a pivot table. Over here is where we're going to build the table. And over here is how we're going to build a table. Here are the controls. Here's the list of variables. You'll recall these as column headers. And then there's 4 boxes down here. This is how we're going to build a table over here. Typically a table is going to have row labels. You put any variable that can provide your labels there. In this case, we'll eventually use some column labels, but we're going to leave that alone at first. And then you want whatever numbers you want analyzed, you will put that there. So what we are looking for is gender. I'm going to click and drag. Now it's starting to build a table. These are the row labels. And then we're looking for salary, so I'm just going to click and drag into the values area, and it's going to give me some numbers. The first number it gives me by default, because Excel can't read my mind, is sum. Now we don't really want the sum of the salary. It doesn't make any sense, doesn't help us. 2 ways of getting rid of that is you can click down here, go to value field settings, and then change it here. So I'm going to change it to count, because that's the first thing we need. This is telling me that there's 53 females in the sample and 67. So do we have enough to do this analysis? Yeah. Okay, this is more than 30, that's more than 30. So when we run the statistics, they're going to be reliable. We're happy with that. We also need average, standard deviation, and min and max. So we're going to take salary and keep dragging it down there. So average, standard deviation, min, and max. Okay. I'm going to click in the header up here to change what Excel is doing. It's going to be the average, standard deviation. I need one more. And sorry. Well, let's see, average standard deviation, and then min, and then I'll have to make this max. You can move it around down here, but I'm having trouble doing that. There we go. Okay, now looking at this, obviously these numbers, do we need those decimal places? Are they helping us? What could we do to make these numbers more readable? Yeah, so just, convert them to what they are, which is dollars. Now, we don't really need to see how many cents they get per year, so let's just get rid of that. Simplifies things a little bit. You could, if you wanted to, center it. But that makes for a much better set of data to analyze. Now, like I said last class, I would never try to create a table out of this because there's lots of restrictions on formatting in the live pivot table. So I'm just going to copy it and then paste it as values. So you can right click and then choose paste as values, or you could go here and say paste and then paste as values, and that gives you raw values to work with. You can do whatever you want in terms of formatting. Now in this case, my first step is convert it to numbers, make it prettier, and I can do an analysis here. I'm looking at this and I can see that just by eyeballing it, men make more, about $6,000 more. It looks like there's a standard deviation. There's a fairly substantial difference in the standard deviation. Male standard deviation is higher. The max, or the min for men, is higher, and the max is also higher. So what does that tell you? Does that give you any insight into what's going on in this company? Just make, common sense, what does your common sense tell you that stuff means? Well, at the very least, we know that men make more, and then we have to decide if 6,000 is a lot. Is 6,000, off the top of your head, what percentage is that? What percent, what percentage more in salary, let's say that? You could do this off the top of your head. What's that? Yeah, you're looking at, okay, so what does it mean that women have a lower minimum? Does that tell you anything?
Salaries would be lower.
At the very least, it's telling you, well, the lowest paid woman is getting less than the lowest paid man. And what does this tell you? And would you say a lot more, a little more? A lot more. Would you say a lot more or a little more? Okay, so you're making those judgments, and you can do ratios and proportions down here to show those proportions more clearly. Okay, so and then I could do a chart out of this if I wanted to, like a little chart. That is how you generate your basic stats. Now what I would do is take this, I'm going to copy it, and here's a little trick. You don't have to learn this trick, but it might help you, and I'm going to use this thing called transpose. So copy and then paste elsewhere and then paste transpose, and it puts it into a different order. Now, is this a better order or a better way of looking at this to compare or not?
Yes. Yeah, it's all connected and easy to see.
Right, so this would be a good way of starting to build your table. Now your table is going to have a table title up above, so I'll provide some room for that. All right, I'm going to center, I don't know if I can do it here, maybe not. I'm going to center and merge the top cells so I can make a title out of that. All right, and I'm just going to give it a meaningful title. The headers typically are going to be differentiated, so I'm going to make them bold. Okay, and we don't need the full, label that Excel gave us. So we need count. We already know it's count of salary. We know it's average of salary. We know it's standard deviation of salary. We can spell it out. And we're going to add range. And range is simply the maximum minus the minimum Okay. And according to APA style, they want lines here. They want a line above and below, so I'm going to create a line below and a line above. If I could find it, top and bottom border would be good. So say top and bottom border would be good. So this would be a nicely formatted table. We don't need all this room, so I'm going to squeeze it a little bit. Okay. Now you should have something like this to report. Make this maybe smaller so we can fit it. That would be a nice table. So at the end of the day, you need to have a table exactly formatted like that. That's APA style table. You have to have number formatting, you have to have headers differentiated, you have to have a title. Okay, so that's your goal. You know, even if you don't have it now, during class today or class, you know, next Thursday, make sure you know how to do that and make sure all your tables look like that. I'm going to start again with, I'm going to take age. So right now, male and female are the categories and the numbers is salary, right? So what I want to do is take age and make them into categories and then look at differences in salary within chunks of categories. So category or age is obviously a numeric. You know, instead of having every single age in the company, what we want is chunks of age. You know, 15 to 25, or 15 to 24, 25 to 35, and etc. So I'm going to show you how to do that. I'm going to go back to the data, and some of you who are doing JG class, just you can leave them 3, 5, 7. You don't have to chunk it. Years worked, you'll have to chunk it. Age, you'll have to chunk it. So those groups definitely should follow what I'm doing now because there's an extra step. Same thing, just generating descriptive stats, but there's an extra step. Minority or ethnicity code, that's the same exact thing as male and female, so you've already seen what to do there. So you guys are good. I'm gonna take age and chunk that up so we can analyze the descriptive stats and see if there's a difference in salary by age. And then we're going to look at differences between males and females. Okay, so I'm clicking anywhere in the data. It doesn't matter where I click. And then I go to Insert, Pivot Table, accept the defaults, starting a new pivot table. Okay. No. I don't know why that came up. All right, now in this case, I have scrunched it too much. All right. The trick here is you're using a numeric variable as a row label. That's the only kind of counterintuitive trick. We're going to use age as the label, and then we're going to use salary to see, you know, what chunks of age have what salary level. So I'm going to take age, which is a numeric variable, and put it in the row area. Now that's going to give me everybody's age in the entire company. That's going to be a very, very busy and useless chart. Okay? And I'm going to click anywhere in the data. Don't leave it clicked on the title. Don't click outside of it. Click anywhere in the data like that, and you'll have access. Actually, I think the Macs are a little bit different, but you'll have access to this thing called a group field. So go to the top, go to the ribbon that says Pivot Table Tools, go to Analyze, and then find something that says Group Field. Once you hit Group Field, it gives you its suggestion on how it wants to group. It gives you the starting at, the ending at, and it's the chunks. So this is going to group it by 10. You may or may not want that. You can change that. I typically like to round stuff off. So I'm going to say from 15 years old to 75. So it's more commonsensical. That's just my choice. You don't have to do that. Looking at 10 years, that seems fine with me. I'm just going to give that a try. I can always change it. 10 years gives me 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 categories. That's okay. I can make it less or more if I want to. Let's start with that. The first thing I want to do is get a count. Now with a count, you don't really need to use a numeric variable like salary, but I'll do it anyway. I'll bring it down into the values area, and then it's going to give me a sum. I don't want that. I want count. Double click. Count. This is telling me what? 15 to 24, and then it says 5. What does that mean, real world? What does a count of 5 mean?
5 people in that age group.
Yep, you have 5 people in this company in that age group. Now what you could do is drag that down again, make it count, and a little extra step that might be interesting is to click on this tab, show values as, and then percent of column total, and this gives you the percentage. In other words, the percentage of people in the company who are between 15 and 24 is 4.17%. Okay, so that might be an additional bit of information that you want. You know, what I did is simply dragged salary down again, changed it to count. After I changed it to count, I went over here, show values as, and it's the percent of column total. So it's 5 of 120 is 4.1%. 17 of 120 is 14.7%. So this might give you some insight into the data. At this point, what you could do is look at the distribution. So let's quickly do that. I'm going to create a pivot table in order to look at the distribution.
Pivot table of the pivot table?
Well, sorry, pivot chart. So there's by count. So this is showing you the chunks of age, and this is giving you the number of employees in each chunk. So what's the most employees are of what age?
45.
Yeah, so this is actually a distribution chart. This might give you some insight into the company. Over here you have values, which is how many people are in the company, and you'll want to tell the reader that by going over here and adding an axis, vertical axis title, so people know what you're looking at. And then you would add a title to this chart, and so on and so forth. So that's something you could do with that data. Let's continue with all the stats we need from that. Let's see, male, female. Okay, it's on the same page. I'm going to take this and move it to a different page. So go up. Okay, move chart. Move it to a new sheet. Okay, now it's its own sheet. I'm going to continue with this pivot table and add average, standard deviation, min, and max, because that's all the stats we need. Okay, and you would simply keep dragging salary down let's see, average, standard deviation, min, and max. So, average, standard deviation, minimum, and maximum. Okay. What's my next step? This is data I'm going to have to build into a table. What's my next step? Copy and paste. So I'm going to copy, and I'm going to paste down here. How am I going to paste it? Okay. Now, what I could do is look at it this way, or I could transform it. This is a count that's, it's got a lot of, well, these are actually percentages, sorry. So we're going to convert those to percentages. This is your count. This is your salary, so those are numeric. Don't need the cents. Okay, so it's starting to look a little bit better. Now what I could do is take this, copy it, and then do a paste transpose. And that would allow me to compare more easily across the categories. Okay, so do we have any insight into this? Is this helping us at all? Is there a difference in average salary by age?
Yes.
Okay, so we know that age might explain the differences between genders, because if women are younger, then maybe that explains why they get less salaries. How can we directly analyze that? We can actually add gender. To this analysis. So the next step to help you make your decision is you would take gender and add that to the column area. Now you got males versus females in each one of these categories. So you can take one of these categories and you can analyze it. Let's say average, male versus female. Take a few of these.
You're posting the video of this, right?
Yep.
Did you add the gender back into the pivot table? And that's how it added it to everything else?
I added gender to the column. Okay, so what we're looking for here is there a difference within age categories of male or female, salaries? You can also look at, what's the average age of males versus females. But this is one way of taking a look at that subject, addressing that subject. So, if there was any bias, you would find within age categories, males still having a higher salary within age categories. and there's kind of mixed evidence here. It looks like between 65 and 75, in that age, women actually make a lot more than men. In this case, women make less than men, about the same, a little less, and a little less. Okay? So that gives you some information about the relationship between average salary or men, women, age, and salary. Okay? The thing to really notice here is how you can do what you could do is drill down, get further analysis by adding additional variables here. Okay, so that allows you to provide additional evidence, for your case. Okay, now the other thing you could do is look at the overall descriptive statistics, which I'll do very quickly now. Instead of here, we have differences between males and females in terms of salary. What may be helpful if we have all the differences in one table, so we can see that if males and females are older, are higher in level, etc. So I'm going to create one of those real quick. I know we don't have a lot of time, but it should be fairly easy to do. And that's going to give us a lot of insight right there. So I'm going to do a pivot table in which I want to look at what's the average salary, what's the average age, what's the average years worked, and JG class. What else do we got here? Ethnicity code is 0 or 1. We don't really want that. I think this will work. So if you simply drag those items into the values area without a row value, you're going to get this table here. And if I drag that over here, it'll change the format of the table. Okay? And the purpose of this would be so you get the average of everything, convert it to average, and then take gender, and you can compare males and females by gender. Now, it looks like that the average female is a little bit younger than the men. It looks like the average years worked that females have is a lot less than men. It looks like the average level in the company, how high they got, is a lot, substantially less than men. So what kind of evidence does this give us? Our question is that difference in salary due to some hidden bias, or is there another logical explanation that, for that? What's that?
It's probably not biased.
Well, there's certainly no slam dunk. In other words, you could actually make the data is allowing you to say that other explanations, you can't prove with this data that there's no bias. What the data is doing is suggesting or evidencing alternative hypotheses to make the assertion of bias something that's not, as of yet, evidence. The only evidence you have is the average salary is a lot different. right now, but you're actually supporting alternative hypotheses, which is outside of some sort of, bias in perception, or so on and so forth. It could just simply be that there's, for whatever reason, women are younger, women have less years work, women are in lower levels. Now, what you could argue is that, well, why is that? But at the very least, we have some facts to deal with and talk about rather than just speculation. Okay, next time, what you should do is go to, there's a page, you want to go to Pages, and there's a Data Set Choices page. Okay, you need to read through that page and then make some choices. One data set choice is the survey I gave you. Another is a survey from Pew Research that I downloaded. And then below that, there's literally 30 or 40 other data sets you could use. So you need to look through that, decide what you want to work with, and then make sure you've made that choice before next class, because we're going to work on that data next class.